All right, a bunch to get into here. I just teased it. We've been talking about the Dak injury, the big takeaways from the NFL in general, but there were a bunch of massive stories in college football as well. And I want to run through all of those and discuss my major takeaways from college football. And I'm going to bring in Dub in a little bit to talk about Auburn just absolutely stealing a game, if you didn't see it, against Arkansas. But to me, the most significant games out there were several, and I'm going to count them down. To me, there were 4 fairly significant games in no particular order in terms of telling us something significant about the college football season. And I'm going to start with Clemson. They absolutely obliterated De'Aaron King and Miami. And I'm kicking myself for not seeing this coming because Clemson seems to take particular joy in beating down anybody in the ACC who is coming for their crown. And there was talk, maybe the U is back. Maybe Miami has proven that they can be competitive with Clemson. And then they got on the field, and other than Dabo getting the kick blocked at the end of the half, really Miami didn't do very much at all to suggest that they belonged on the same field with Clemson. They got dominated throughout. We'll see what happens in November when Notre Dame gets to host Clemson. That, to me, is the only real game where Clemson has a chance to lose. And even if they lose that game, they would theoretically get a rematch in the ACC championship game where they would be able to avenge it on a neutral site field. So Clemson's path to the college football playoff, given their schedule and given the dominant performance that they just put on Miami, seems fairly assured. Trevor Lawrence is going to be in New York as one of the Heisman finalists, barring a significant injury. That is the takeaway from the ACC and from Clemson. Another story. Jimbo Fisher, $75 million contract, Jimbo Fisher. So why sometimes it's not good for your contract to get out there publicly. Because if Jimbo was a $5 million a year guy, I think a lot fewer people would talk about Jimbo in a negative way. But he makes $7.5 million a year, and everybody's like, holy cow, A&M is paying Jimbo Fisher big-time money, and he looked like he wanted to punch every critic he's ever had as soon as they won. Some people win, and they are joyful. They celebrate the moment. Jimbo ripped off his headset, and he looked like he wanted to put on gloves or maybe brass knuckles and just start swinging at people. That's what I thought when I saw A&M kick that field goal in the final play of the game against Florida. Now, credit to the Aggies out there listening. I don't know what 25% of a stadium looks like, but if that was 25%, then I'm the best-looking man in the world. Spoiler, even my mom doesn't think I'm the best-looking man in the world, all right? Now, I loved the stadiums having fans in them. I loved the environment. I loved the cadets, the crowd, the joy. I even wanted them to storm the field and drive the Corona Bros mad. But my goodness, I think that crowd might have made the difference. And Dan Mullen certainly did. Because in his postgame, he said, I want the swamp filled. I want 90,000 plus people there for our game against LSU. Now, I don't think you need them for that game against LSU. Because if you watched LSU lose to Missouri, I don't feel good about LSU's ability to cover anybody on Florida Field at the Swamp on Saturday. And I don't think LSU fans do either. By the way, great stand by Missouri. 4 plays inside the 1 against LSU, and they couldn't get in. Huge win for Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou in that first game. But to me, the Florida loss is not as big as you might think it is because the SEC East is going to come down to what happens in the cocktail party. And for those of you out there listening right now, all over the country, if you want to have a phenomenal bucket list experience at some point in your life, go to Jacksonville, Florida, and go to the cocktail party. It is so much fun, the Florida-Georgia game. Half Florida, half Georgia. They call it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party because the amount of alcohol consumed before that game, they won't even play it after dark. City of Jacksonville's like, no. We got to play this every single game in the afternoon. They won't kick it off after dark. I've been fortunate enough to be down there in Jacksonville, hang out in Jack's Beach. A lot of the Georgia people go out to the islands and then drive in. It's phenomenal. Spectacular events. The best thing, Jacksonville has the Jaguars. Everybody in Jacksonville would tell you, no. If you come to Jacksonville, don't go to a Jags game. Go to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It's that much fun. That's where ultimately the SEC East is going to be decided. So Kyle Trask and Florida, I felt like kind of gave that game away. Now, give A&M credit for finding a way to win. But Florida had that game. They had a couple of turnovers. They weren't able to put it away. And as a result, they don't have much of a margin for error. But ultimately, I don't think Georgia, which is my other big takeaway, is going to lose to anybody other than Alabama this year. The only team that can beat Georgia on their schedule, Alabama and Florida. Tennessee went down to Athens. I got that one completely wrong. I looked smart in the first half. I told you this was going to be a tight game in the fourth quarter. I was right for much of the game. And then Georgia just went 0-60 on Tennessee for about 15 minutes in the second half. About 4 minutes to go in that game. Well, a minute to go in that game. 23-21 Georgia. And then Georgia just hits the gas, and they flew right by the Vols and scored 3 touchdowns down the stretch pretty fast in short order and put the game away. And the reason why they put the game away is Georgia's got an unbelievable defense. This was a day where defense died in college football, except for in Athens, where I think the front seven for Kirby Smart is incredible. Tennessee made a couple of plays in the passing game and man-to-man coverage, but I think this Georgia defense may well be the best in the nation. We'll see exactly how they look on the road against Alabama this upcoming weekend in primetime in what is the biggest game of the weekend in college football by far, number 2 against number 3. That Georgia performance, if you're a Tennessee fan and you're listening to me right now, first of all, you should go sign up at fanduel.com/clay. Gets free money right there, fanduel.com/clay, because at least if you're a Tennessee fan, online sports gambling is about to be legal in the state of Tennessee, and you can at least make some money while you watch your teams play. FanDuel.com/clay, $50 right in your pocket. If you're in Tennessee listening to me right now, FanDuel.com/clay. Go sign up. Use my code, $50 right in your pocket. I'm giving you free money, and you might need it. You took some of my gambling picks this past weekend and in the weekends ahead. But I thought Tennessee was ready to run with the big dogs. They weren't. Georgia kicked their butts. All right? So going forward now, the question is Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Auburn, only the 6 teams that have – there are only 2 teams with no losses, Georgia and Alabama, who play this weekend in the SEC. Only 4 more teams have just 1 loss. There's a lot of parity, I would say, in the SEC so far through 3 weeks. And let me also say this. Corona Bros out there said this would never happen. Credit to the SEC, Commissioner Greg Sankey, players, coaches, fans. Not only has the SEC gone 21 for 21 in playing college football games so far through the first 3 weeks, but they've also done it with fans present for every game. And the Corona Bros out there said this was impossible. Now, there may well be games that have to get postponed. There may well be games that have to get moved around before all is said and done. Look at all the stuff that's going on in the NFL right now. I think that may well happen in college football too, but 30% of the season is done, and all 21 of the games have been played so far. So hopefully they can continue to move around and get as many different games played as possible, all right? So the other big takeaway, what about Alabama Lane Kiffin? That was Alabama versus Lane Kiffin, I mean. That was an unbelievable game. I got the craziest stat that I saw coming out of college football, all right? Alabama went out there against the Lane Kiffin coach team, all right? And if you looked at the number of plays that Alabama ran, they got the ball 11 times. Alabama did. They ultimately scored 63 points. If Alabama had gotten every single play right, they would have gained 764 yards. They gained 723. Ole Miss stopped Alabama at the 1-yard line, and they made them punt from the Ole Miss 40. That means the Ole Miss defense playing the entire game stopped Alabama from gaining 41 yards. If Alabama had taken possession against air that entire game, they would have gained 764 yards. They gained 723 against the Ole Miss defense. The Ole Miss defense stopped them from advancing 41 yards. That's all they took away from Alabama the entire game. Now, it's the worst defensive performance I've ever seen from an Alabama team. Most yards ever in the entirety of a game in the SEC history, and as if that were not enough, also the most points ever scored in a regulation SEC football game.